What if you had a single framework that could explain not only how systems are built, but also precisely why they break? Well, that's the core idea behind Atlas T. It's a formal model designed to get at this fundamental duality, how things cohere and how they fail.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with a problem that I'm sure feels familiar to many of you. Then we'll introduce this framework as a two-way solution. We'll dive into its core cycle, see how it works in both directions, and finally we'll look at the single expression that actually governs the whole thing.
So let's get right to it. What's the fundamental problem this was all designed to solve? Honestly, it's a feeling we all know, whether you're building a company, a project, or even trying to stick to a personal habit. It's this bizarre paradox, right? You've got something that's working just fine. You try to scale it to make it bigger, and all of a sudden it becomes fragile, unstable. Sometimes it just completely falls apart. Why is it that growth so often feels like it's inviting failure?
Well, a big part of the issue is that most models are basically one-way streets. They give you this great blueprint for how to build something from the ground up, but when things start to go wrong, there's no reverse gear. There's no map for going backwards. You're often just left with one option: tear it all down and start over.
And this is exactly where Atlas T comes in with a really powerful and, frankly, unique solution. It's built on a totally different premise. Okay, here's the formal definition. The word you really need to latch onto is bidirectional. It means this framework is a generative pathway. It shows you how to build things up, but at the same time, it's also a diagnostic pathway. It shows you how to analyze what went wrong. It's your blueprint and your forensics kit, all in one.
So let's get to the engine of this whole thing. And what's so crucial to understand is that it's not some complicated flowchart or a long checklist. At its heart, it's a single ordered sequence.
The whole framework is expressed through these 4 geometric operators: triangle, circle, square, and spiral. And I have to be absolutely clear here. These are not 4 separate stages you can just pick and choose from. They form one single, indivisible structural cycle that has to be moved through in order.
Just think of each of these operators as a necessary structural condition. It all has to start with the triangle, which is clarity, your why. From there, you can move to the circle, which is connection, the who, and the how we all relate. Next up is the square, which is containment, the rules, the processes, the infrastructure that gives everything stability. And only when those 3 are in place can you have the spiral, true sustainable growth.
All right, now for the really cool part. Let's see how this one cycle, this one sequence, operates in 2 completely different but equally powerful directions. The pieces are the same, but the direction you travel changes everything. And this slide, it just lays it out perfectly. When you move forward through the sequence from triangle to spiral, that's the act of construction. That's how you design and build a system that's meant to last. But when you move in reverse, from the spiral back to the triangle, that is the act of diagnosis. That's how you figure out where the failure really came from.
You see, the logic of building is totally sequential. You have to establish clarity before you can create real connection. You have to stabilize those connections with containment before you can even think about sustainable growth. And here's the thing. If you skip a step, the system doesn't just explode. No, it introduces a hidden, latent instability that's just waiting to be revealed later on.
And this quote from the source material is the perfect way to pivot to diagnosis. It really reframes the whole problem. The stress of growth, it acts like a pressure test. It doesn't create the cracks, it just reveals the ones that were already there. The problem isn't the growth itself.
So, when it's time to diagnose, we always start where the pain is most obvious, at the spiral, the growth layer. This is where you see all the symptoms: burnout, instability, performance dropping off a cliff. And it's so tempting to treat these as the root cause, but they're not. They're just the smoke. The fire is somewhere else entirely.
So if the symptoms are all showing up at the spiral, where's the actual breakdown? Where's the real point of failure? Well, the framework gives us a formal path to find it.
This is what reverse traversal is all about. It's the process of tracing that symptom upstream to its origin. You move from the spiral back to the square, and you ask, is our infrastructure failing? Are our processes broken? If not, you go to the circle. Are our relationships or communication breaking down? And if you still haven't found it, you go all the way back to the triangle. Was our foundational clarity, our core mission, ever really solid to begin with?
Now, I need to pause here because this is an absolutely critical distinction. This framework does not have feedback loops inside a single cycle. You don't learn and iterate by going from the spiral back to the triangle. Instead, a full traversal from triangle to spiral is one complete cycle. To iterate, you finish that cycle, you learn from it, and then you reinstantiate an entirely new cycle, starting again at the triangle, but with new, improved clarity. It's a sequence of discrete cycles, not one big continuous loop.
So, what is it that holds this entire structure together? Well, it turns out this isn't just a collection of good ideas. The whole thing is anchored by a single formal expression.
The entire framework is governed by this balance relation. T equals P times kappa, that's the Greek letter kappa, times R.
And let's be crystal clear about what this expression is and what it isn't. This is a statement of logic. It is not a formula you plug numbers into. It expresses a structural dependency. The variables, P, kappa, and R, are not quantities you measure. They represent necessary states, what are called admissibility conditions. This expression defines the conditions needed for a system to be consistent. It is absolutely not a tool for scoring things or making empirical predictions.
And here you can see exactly how the structure maps to that logic. The triangle corresponds to P for proportion, defining the scope and balance. The circle corresponds to R for resonance, aligning all the components. The square corresponds to kappa, representing phase, enforcing the right sequence and timing. And when those three conditions are met, the spiral reveals T, the resulting state of the whole system.
So this is the big idea, right here. The geometric sequence isn't just a metaphor for the equation, it enacts the equation. Moving from triangle to spiral is the physical process of satisfying the logical conditions of proportion, resonance, and phase to produce a final state. You have to see it this way. The structure is the logic in motion.
So what's the ultimate takeaway? Atlas T is a unified, non-prescriptive reasoning framework. It's not here to tell you what to do, it's a tool for thinking that tells you where to look. It gives you a formal logic to understand how systems hold together, how they fall apart, and ultimately, how they can be regenerated.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. Whether it's a project at work, the dynamics of your team, or even a personal creative goal, what system in your world could you understand better if you looked at it not just forwards, but backwards too?